So I'll call the meeting to order. I'll accept to adopt the agenda. Nigel moves to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, minutes from the May 22nd meeting.
I'll move them.
Dan moves approval of the minutes from the May 22nd meeting. All those in favor? Carried. So the first, I see Steve was here. Just wait for him to come back.
He said he was just going to get a coffee.
Okay. Where are you zooming from today, Dan?
I'm at home. I woke up not feeling very good, so I didn't want to come around you guys.
Oh, were you hanging out with the Prime Minister on the weekend, or what?
Well, no, I wouldn't be here. That's for sure. No, it was all good, but I tested negative. I just didn't want to come in and possibly give you guys a cold.
Thanks. Good morning, Steve. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. We'll move forward with this. So first on the agenda for consideration is 21 CY19. Kayleen, go ahead.
So we'll start, Mr. Chairman, with Steve DeBlois, who submitted actually a development permit application. Yeah, 22-137.
Sorry, I jumped ahead. 22-137, that would be you, Becky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So development application 22-137, the owner applicant is Steve DeBlois. The legal description is Plan 0011482, Block 1, Lot 1, and the municipal address is 12309, Range Road 44A. Property size is 7.71 acres, and this is zoned Country Residential District 2. The proposal is to construct a 1,260 square foot shop for personal use with the setback relaxation of 2.83 meters or 9.29 feet. The applicant is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission to construct a 1,260 square foot shop with a proposed setback of 4.57 meters or 15 feet from the side property line. This results in a setback relaxation request of 2.83 meters or 9.29 feet. There is an existing 120 square foot structure for the well and 2 horse shelters. If the application is approved, the floor area of all accessory buildings would be approximately 1,640 square feet in total. As the letter of intent states, the applicant has selected the proposed location for the shop to ensure that the personal view from the home is not obstructed. In addition, the topography of the property does not lend itself for development without requiring significant dirt work and cost to the applicant. The closest neighboring residence is located approximately 0.5 kilometers west of the proposed development. In accordance with section 16.6.1 of the Land Use Bylaw, the Development Authority shall review each development permit application and determine its compliance with this bylaw. When a development permit application includes variances, requests, or discretionary uses, the Development Authority shall assess the application as outlined based on the following criteria in accordance with section 646 of the MGA. Unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land, and the proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for that land or building in the Land Use Bylaw. In our Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, under the Country Residential District 2, it states that a minimum of 1.5 meters or 5 feet side yard and rear setback for accessory structures less than 14 meters squared in size. For every additional 14 meters squared, an additional 1 meter side and rear yard setback is required up to a maximum of 6.1 meters or 20 feet for the side yard and 7.6 meters or 25 feet for the rear yard. It also states that an accessory building shall not exceed 2,400 square feet in size and that the total floor area for all buildings shall not exceed 4,000 square feet. So I did circulate the application. It is within the IDP. In the City of Medicine Hat, there were no comments received at the time of writing this report. The Town of Redcliffe has reviewed the proposed development application as forwarded and offers no comments. And Cypress County Public Works replied that they have no comments. I do have some pictures for you. So this is on Range Road 44A, looking south down into Mr. Deblois' property. So you can see the existing residence and the proposed building site to the right. And then just a look at the residence. So we're looking northwest here at the proposed building site. And so from the residence, looking to the east and the south. And then just to the north at the proposed building site. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple options for you. So option 1 is to approve development permit application 22-137, subject to the following conditions and with the understanding that it will be constructed as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes must be submitted for approval by the Development Officer or Municipal Planning Commission. And numbers 1 through 7 are standard conditions. So we'll jump to number 8, which is a setback relaxation of 2.83 meters or 9.29 feet from the side property line for the shop. And option 2 is to refuse development permit application 22-137 as the proposal does not comply with the side yard setback as stated in the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, Country Residential District 2. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. DeBlois, do you understand and agree with the conditions on option 1, or would you like to speak to your application as well?
Nope, I think Becky's got it pretty clear.
Okay, so you're okay with conditions 1 through 8 on option 1?
I didn't actually see the conditions, but if it means that my proposal is going to meet your requirements, then I'm good with.
Okay, Becky, I think you wanted to read these anyways. Do you want to read off the conditions?
Well, I was gonna ask Mr. Deblois if he'd like me to read them off, yeah.
Yeah, or if I just get a copy of it.
You should have a copy.
It was emailed to you with these information for the meeting, but I'll read them off. So number one, it is the responsibility of the developer and or owner to ensure that any applicable provincial and federal statutes and regulations are complied with. Number 2, an Alberta land surveyor is to locate or post the location of the building or structure prior to construction as per the approved sketch. The county shall not be responsible or liable for non-compliance with this condition. Number 3, this development shall comply with all regulations under the Land Use Bylaw except where variance has been granted by the Municipal Planning Commission. Number 4, a new permit must be obtained for any future additions and or changes in the use or the intensity of use of the land or buildings. Number 5, the approval of this application does not in any way obligate Cypress County to provide access to the development. Number 6, Alberta Municipal Affairs requires permits pursuant to the Safety Codes Act to be obtained prior to commencement of construction. Alberta Municipal Affairs has authorized accredited agencies to review construction drawings, related documents, and issue permits on their behalf. A list of authorized accredited agencies is available at the Cypress County office. And number 7, the applicant must contact Alberta One Call to locate existing utility lines prior to commencement. And then again, number 8 is a setback relaxation of 2.83 meters from the side property line for the shop.
Thank you, Becky. Okay, Mr. DeBlois, you're in agreement with those conditions?
I concur, yes.
Okay. All right, I'll open the floor to discussion from Planning Commission. Actually, we'll jump right to a motion. Dan, do you have any discussion or? Okay. So, Dan? Okay, I read your lips. We can't hear you right now, by the way. Okay, so he said I'm good. So Lloyd moves approval of 22/137 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So, Mr. DeBlanc, your development permit has been approved subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The development permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days from the date of the issue, the development permit will become valid at that time. If you have any further questions, you may contact the development officer to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you.
Just a question. Is this a necessity that we have to go through this additional 3 weeks, being that my closest neighbor is 0.5 of a kilometer and he cannot see my house?
Yes.
So much for red tape reduction this provincial government did, huh?
We all permits have to be advertised, and we have to have public input into that. So, call it red tape or what you will. It's just that's part of the process. We have to allow people the appropriate time to appeal the issuance of a permit. That's a discretionary
Yeah, it's not a refinery or a or some windmills. I get it, but anyway, anything else?
That should be it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to Kayleen's 21 CY 19. So we have Michael Bullen. Is Michael Bullen and Mr. Bullen in attendance? Do you want to take one of the chairs up front, please? Okay, so this is development application or subdivision application 21 CY 19. Take it away, Kayleen.
Perfect. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Rather than reading the entire subdivision report, I'd just like to provide the Planning Commission with an update. At the previous March 8th meeting of the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission had postponed a decision on the proposed subdivision. Reason being is that the subdivision was proposed as an involuntary severance, so utilizing the SMRID reservoir on the east and then the SMRID drainage canal on the south, and proposing to subdivide the parcel out as agriculture. The Planning Commission wished for Cypress County Council to review the application and consider a land use redesignation to country residential, and that was approved by Council at the May 17th meeting. So this application is now back in front of the Planning Commission for a further decision. So if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, my recommendation and conditions have not changed since this was previously proposed. But for the benefit of Mr. Bullen, perhaps I'll review those subdivision approval conditions once more, and you can deliberate from there.
Thank you.
So the original approval conditions were subject to 4 conditions. Number 1, that the developer was required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 4.85 hectares, which was owing under a deferred reserve caveat for 2.81 hectares at a rate of $1,599.41 per hectare, which is 10% of the appraised market value. The payment was to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration. Condition number 2 is for the developer to enter into a municipal services agreement with the county for the engineer design and construction for the extension of the existing service road to accommodate and construct a cul-de-sac turnaround in order to provide access to the parcel with direct and immediate access from the Black and White Trail. And the municipal services agreement is to be executed and registered with the subdivision's registration. Condition number 3, if water is to be provided for the subdivided parcel from the SMRID, then the developer is required to provide the county with written evidence that the appropriate agreements have been signed. And condition number 4 is the standard condition attached to subdivisions, which is for the supply of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements that are required. And that is my update on the subdivision, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kayleen. Mr. Bullen, would you like to speak to your application at this time? So there's a button there you push and it'll light up as red when, there you go.
Yeah, I don't think I have too much to say on it. I was a little just wondering what the improvement would be to the cul-de-sac, because there is that secondary road that kind of allows access to that property if that was to be developed. kind of has that sliver on the south side of it. I wonder if I could develop that, and then there would be nothing needed for the cul-de-sac improvement.
Go ahead, Keeling.
And Public Works would require that the access comes from the existing internal service road. And of course, forecasting that eventually the property may sell to another entity, and that other entity may require demand, I guess, that access is provided from the same internal service road as the remainder of the subdivision. So that's why we have the recommendation we do.
Fair enough.
That makes sense. Any other questions, concerns, discussion?
No, other than that, I think it's straightforward.
Okay, good. All right, I'll open the floor to discussion from the Planning Commission. Do you want to move it? Okay. Okay, so Lloyd moves approval of Subdivision 21 CY19 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You are advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided areas surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all of the conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner after today to discuss them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bullen. Okay, so next we have Mr. Russell and Global Raymac. Okay, so this is subdivision 21 or 22 CY10. Take it away, Kayleen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Subdivision 22 CY10, and of course representing this application today we have George Russell, who is the landowner, and Brian Monroe from Global Raymac Services. The owner of the property, George and Judith Russell, and applicant is Global Raymac Surveys on their behalf. The existing land use classification is A2 agriculture, and the property is located on Township Road 83, approximately 1.6 kilometers east of Highway 514. And the application is intended to subdivide a 1.44 hectare or 3.56 acre parcel containing an existing residence and yard to create a separate title for Mr. Russell's family member. The remainder of the agricultural title contains an existing yard site, agricultural outbuildings and pasture land, and is 160 acres in size. The existing quarter section gains access from an existing approach from Township Road 83, which terminates at the quarter section line of the southeast quarter. The landowner is requesting that the proposed subdivision gain legal and physical access from an existing private drive, which would be registered as an access right-of-way plan and easement agreement upon the Alberta land title at the time of land title's registration. In the past, the county has encouraged that either the applicants accommodate the private access drive as part of their subdivision area, or that they survey and register the area of the private access road as a Cypress County public road allowance to ensure physical and legal access to the parcel in the event land ownership changes hands. The area dedicated to the access right-of-way is approximately 30 acres in area. If the private access drive were to be surveyed and registered as a county public road allowance, the developer would be required to upgrade the road at their expense to a high-grade gravel standard as per the county design guidelines and construction standards, and would then be considered a public road accessible to the general public. In addition, the quarter section has been identified by Alberta Culture and Tourism under the Historical Resources Act as having a high potential to contain a natural resource. There are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the proposed subdivision, and of course is well outside of the tri-area IDP boundary and within the boundary of the Cypress Hills Fringe Area Structure Plan. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to retain an agricultural land base by reducing fragmentation and conversion of agricultural land. Maintaining an agricultural land base recognizes the value of agricultural land for sustainable growth, as well as providing an opportunity for expansion of agricultural production. Section 663 of the MGA states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of parcel of land that is subject of a subdivision to provide reserve, if one lot is to be created from a quarter section. Part 29 road access of the subdivision regulation states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority. Part 5.1 application referrals states that the Deputy Minister of the Minister responsible for the Historical Resources Act must be referred if any of the land is subject or is adjacent to or contains land identified in the Historical Resources listing. And Part 14, distance from a highway, states that a subdivision authority shall not, in a municipality other than a city, approve an application for subdivision if the land that is subject of the application is within 1.6 kilometers of the center line of a highway right-of-way. And requirements of Section 14 and 15 may be varied by the subdivision authority with the written approval of the minister. Under the county's municipal development plan, Section 4.1.21 states that the county may support the subdivision of an existing farmstead if the following conditions are met. Agricultural parcel remains the balance of the quarter section. The subdivision will not impact or hinder agricultural use on the balance of the quarter. The subdivision parcel size for an existing farmstead is based on the area incorporating the farm dwelling and accessory buildings and structures, unless there are physical or topographic features which define a larger practical parcel. The subdivision of the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel retain the same agricultural land use district as the remnant quarter section, and both the existing farmstead or vacant single parcel have direct or shared easement access to the existing municipal road network or to a provincial highway. Section 5.1, Goals and Objectives of the Cypress Hills Fringe Area Structure Plan states that the current Agricultural District 2 land use classification allows some fragmentation to occur. Retaining the current land use classification is seen to balance the ability of the landowner to meet their family estate requirements while minimizing uncontrolled sprawl and preserve the ability for ranching to remain viable industry in the area. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the quarter section. When we circulated the subdivision application, Cypress County Finances replied that there are no local improvement plans associated with the property. The Director of Municipal Services replied that the proposed subdivision area complies with Section 6.3.4 protection of better range and farmland of the Cypress Hills Fringe Area Structure Plan, in that the proposed subdivision location is situated on land that is considered to be better agricultural rangeland. The protection of better range and farmland states land is considered better agricultural rangeland when the land is considered capable of a stocking rate of 35 acres per head or better. A parcel must have 10 acres or more of land that is not considered to be better agricultural rangeland to allow for a higher intensity in use. Proposed subdivision property is considered to be low quality, meaning that it is less productive than 35 acres as per the fringe. Cypress County Utilities replied that they have no comments. Cypress County Public Works replied that the proposed access road should be registered as a road plan under the control of Cypress County to ensure legal access. In the past, private access easements have resulted in issues for the county. TELUS Communications replied that they have no concerns with the proposed subdivision. Fortis Alberta replied that they're the distribution wire service provider for the area and that an easement is required, and the developer can initiate that process by contacting Fortis. The Historical Resource Management Branch of the Government Alberta replied that formal approval under the Historical Resources Act is not necessary. And finally, Alberta Transportation replied that the proposed subdivision is subject to the requirements of Section 14 and 15 of the Subdivision Development Regulation. The proposal is to create a single parcel of land from an unsubdivided quarter section to accommodate an existing residence and improvements. As such, this application is in accordance with Section 14B of the regulation, and access to the proposed parcel and remnant lands is by means other than a highway. The applicant is advised that any development within the right-of-way, within 300 meters beyond the limit of the highway, or within 800 meters from the center point of the intersection, requires a permit from Alberta Transportation. So I've got 3 recommendations today for the Planning Commission's consideration. Recommendation number 1 is postponement of the subdivision. and that would allow for the applicant's surveyor to submit a revised tentative plan of subdivision, which demonstrates both legal and physical access to the proposed subdivision by accommodating the area of the private access drive as part of the overall subdivision. So increasing the subdivision area by the 30 acres to accommodate the existing access road. An alternative recommendation is refusal because the Subdivision Approval Authority is not satisfied that the subdivision has legal access from a Cypress County public road allowance. And another alternative recommendation is approval, subject to 3 conditions. Number 1 is that the developer is required to provide written evidence from Fortis, Alberta, and that the necessary easement agreement has been executed. Number 2, the developer is required to register an access right-of-way plan and easement agreement to ensure continued legal and physical access to the proposed subdivision. Access right-of-way and easement agreement are to be registered in conjunction with the registration of the subdivision plan at Alberta Land Titles. And finally, the last condition is for the developer to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are required. That is my report and recommendations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kayleen. George, would you like to speak to your application at this time?
Yeah, I would. Good morning, everybody. Just a little bit of quick history. Thank you. That pretty well explained everything. Maybe there'd be some pictures, but it probably doesn't matter. It seems like the biggest issue is the road, from what I read through all this. And I just want to give you a little bit of history if you don't know, which I'm sure you don't. We've been there a long time. I know when you see an application come in, you think, oh, some farmer ranchers trying to chop up some land and create some income. Well, in this case, this is not the way it is. My wife's grandfather came over in 1909, and we've been there ever since. My wife and I have been there 50 years. They were there 50 years. Oh, okay, here we got some pictures. And we're not about selling or chopping land. Being right up against the lake, you can imagine how many people come and say, hey, you got a little piece of land you sell me, maybe a quarter, 80 acres, you got something. And the answer has always been no. We're not about chopping it up. The county's mandate is provide, encourage agriculture, and that's what we're wanting to do. My nephew, although he's like a son to us because he's lived with us so much, came back, he works for CalFrac, been there since the company started, their longest employee. And he said, hey, Uncle George, I want to come back to the farm and take over. First thing I said, Jeff, you got to keep your real job because there's no money in agriculture. And yet, just to think about buying a piece of land, especially up there, it's agriculture would never be able to pay for it. So what we're wanting to do is part of our family farm transition. Like, we're getting older, we want to move to the next generation, they want to live there, and so that's what this application's about. Their place is, okay, so in 17 he moved back, his wife and his 2 children, they go to high school, and we got the permit from the county to build a shop and to build a house up there. It's right up on the tree line, right on the horizon, yeah, right there, you got it. Yeah, so that's the location. The access road right there, the Texas gate, that's where the county road stops, and we share it up to the ridge there just before the yellow shop. I go right and jump. And so once the campground at Fire Rock went in, a charging station, I approached the county and they built the road and paid for the road to that Texas gate. So that's the public road we're talking about. There's no way I would approve a public road up to that shop, because as it is now, we have numerous tourists trying to get to Elkwater. From that Texas gate to the lake, it's half a mile, and they follow Google Maps. Google Maps will send them down this road all the time, pulling big trailers, and it doesn't matter how many signs you put up. But it's a real pain having to, and I feel sorry for those people because they're just following their map, and they're, you know, it's not good. Anyway, we don't want a public road even further into our property. There were supposed to be 2 applications here today. My daughter's application, where this picture is taken, is to the south. She also, so I got the 2 families there. They both have, both families of off-farm jobs. and they're both interested in agriculture. So our goal, my wife and I's, is transition plan would they can run it together, and they're both off-farm incomes. They should be able to do it. And so I would like to see this approved. There's going to be another application for my daughters in August. I can understand the conditions. I've already given Fortis permission because you can see the power poles. They come out of Elkwater there on the left-hand side. That's for the main power line that comes out. So they've already got access to, we call it a road, but it's really our trail. We built it because that was our access back until 1980 in order to get to our property. And they just use it if they have to service the road. So there's no issue with Fortis or any other, but the road. We would prefer shared legal access. So nothing changes. We don't do anything to the road, nobody changes it. And I understand it's always nice for the county if, hey, we own the road and we've got say in it, what's going on, but that's the access. And yeah, I would just like the approval. So anybody, any questions? Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
So you're looking at another subdivision application down the road? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, it's a separate quarter. This quarter
Oh, a
right
separate
here.
quarter.
My daughter, yeah, it's coming up in August. I just want to let you know I'm not every meeting coming here with another application. They were both supposed to be here today, but technical issues did make it happen. So right where we're standing, this is a separate quarter. It's a quarter beside us. They built a house on there in 14 years ago, and they lived there. Now, when I say I mean my wife and I, we own all the land. So they don't own their property, although they're paying for their house. So they're kind of worried that, okay, the agreement with Dad is, that's the agreement. But then what happens if, death, dementia, something happens to Dad and, he forgot all about that deal and you don't own the land. So, you know what, I just want to give them some security, and that's the same with Jeff. He's building something there. They want to do agriculture. They're doing agriculture. They're taking over, where this is just some bookkeeping that I should get done in case something does happen. If I get killed, well then where's everything? The county wants to provide, protect, and encourage agriculture, but the way our will's set up now is all the parcels get chopped up to different kids. There's also a son in Calgary. As you know, it would not be agriculture. They'd be all quarter pieces of land with somebody living on them and, not agriculture as we're doing it. Yep, so there is another one coming up, but it's, as I explained, it's just...
Would it be sharing this road too, George, or is it?
No, it's the county road right here. They come off the county road. They go south just a few yards back.
Okay. All right. I'll open the floor up to discussion. Go ahead, Lloyd.
So you'd be happy with filling these three conditions?
Obviously, the Fortis is not an issue at all because they've already got permission, and it would be probably up onto the parcel of land. There's a power pole that's on there, so I'm sure that's all that one is. But yeah, no problem with that. Any other right-of-ways, whether it's 40-mile gas or something, or whatever they are, sure, that's not an issue. But yeah, the road, for me, it's got to be shared lawful access. Shared lawful access, registered like that.
George, or sorry, I'm calling you your dad. Oh man,
His
speaking
name
of
was going to
dementia.
come up, actually. I'd just like to speak on the road itself. I know you had a couple of situations where you had some grief over access road right-of-ways, and I went through it twice, and I actually went through one with my father. And what happened in those situations is there was an access road right-of-way plan registered at Alberta Land Titles. However, the developer and the solicitor did not accompany that road survey with an access road agreement. So with the access road agreement, and Kayleen's got this as condition 2 on the approval because we spoke of this, that's all covered off. No matter what happens in the future, if it's 200 years down the road, if that's in place and it follows the title forever, they have the right to go in there. But because there was no registration of an agreement on some of these other situations, it's just a survey plan at land titles. It's a piece of paper, and it doesn't have an agreement to back it up. That's why there was problems there. With an agreement, and I talked to land titles again this morning just to make sure. He said, yeah, as long as it's accompanied by agreement, you're good to go. So it's all covered with an agreement and a plan registered at the same time, along with the subdivision.
Do we have any of these, have we been currently approving any of these in the recent past?
No, we haven't been, and that's, I wanted to clarify what my recommendation was for my preferred recommendation was to postpone. And the reason being is to allow for the area of the access right-of-way to come in as part of the proposed subdivision. The value in that is that the access road would actually be owned then by the owner of the parcel of the proposed subdivision. So we recognize it's not necessarily suitable to have a public access road coming through there. You don't want just general traffic coming in there. It's a really big nuisance.
Yeah.
So what the Planning Commission has done in the past is we've accommodated the area of the private access drive as part of the overall subdivision. So what you would be looking at is essentially a subdivision area of approximately 33.5 acres to accommodate the road right-of-way coming in. So it's kind of like, what's the worst of the two evils? Do you take out a 33.5 acre subdivision from a quarter section to accommodate the access? Or do you allow for the registration of an access right-of-way? Recognizing that if the Planning Commission allows for the registration of the parcel with an access right-of-way, it becomes a civil issue. So if there's an issue between landowners in the future, the county has no say over that agreement. It's a civil issue between landowners, which generally the county has been brought into. So that's why we're hesitant to allow them.
How so is the county, not from a legal perspective, just from an opinion perspective, how has the county been brought in?
To assist in facilitating proper access. So almost, I would say kind of like maybe a mediator, to be kind of the middle ground if we have people blocking access roads with hay bales, right? Things like that have happened. But like Brian says, maybe some of them have not had agreements accompanied with them, so you don't have a fully intact agreement and easement.
I mean,
I can elaborate on that, Wade.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. Yeah.
Some of the problems there is it does become our problem because we cannot landlock anybody anywhere. So it becomes the county's problem to find an access route for that landowner. I kind of like where Kayleen was going, where we change that over to the 33 acres, because I know what Brian's saying, he can register at land titles, but paperwork gets lost at land titles all the time. And just like George says, things get forgotten. He's doing this so that everything works out in the future and nobody forgets about things. That's what we need to do today, is dot the I's and cross the T's so that in the future we don't have an issue. And then we are, as Cypress County, we are liable to get an access road to that house if something gets lost or something goes wrong.
Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see a possible solution to this, and I'm just going to throw it out there for the Planning Commission as well as for Brian and George's consideration. And I'll try and describe it because I'm going to use the laser pointer on the screen. So Dan, I'll describe it as I'm pointing on the screen so that you can kind of follow along. Ingrid, if you could maybe enlarge the photo that we see on the screen right now. Maybe if you can go just one more. There we go. That should do it. So what Brian Monroe indicated was is accurate. Certainly having a registered right-of-way to the proposed area certainly does provide legal access to the site. There's already physical access to the site because of the established private driveway that the Russells have created to the proposed subdivision area. But as the county has kind of desired over the last number of years, specifically, is that every property would have every proposed subdivision would have immediate and direct access to an already established public road. And so we know that on the west side of the quarter section, that's basically where the Cypress County road allowance comes to an end. So the idea here is, how do we get the proposed subdivision area direct connection and direct access to the established county road allowance, or county developed public road allowance that is on the west side of the quarter section. So I guess in non-official planning terminology, I guess, and Brian can probably concur with this, we've kind of referred to the private driveway or the access to get it out to the road allowance, as we've called that, I guess, unofficially the panhandle of the subdivision, which provides for the access purposes. So we've got it, I guess what I'm pointing to for you, Dan, on the screen here is we have the established building site that the Russells have created further to the west. And of course there's the private driveway that comes to that building site, and then it extends and goes beyond up to the proposed subdivision area as the elevation climbs up the hill. So what I'm thinking is a possible solution is that the established driveway established private roadway from the proposed subdivision area that would come down the hill and make its way to the west could be part of the established part of the part of the proposed subdivision area. So that would be expanded to be included as part of the subdivision. And then right where it kind of where the private road comes from the west boundary of the quarter section and then comes up to the building site, right about there we could have another, or extend basically the subdivision area over to the west of the quarter section, and that would be on the north side of the established the established private driveway, and that would be part of the subdivision as well. And so that would get it out at least to the quarter section. Then what would happen is maybe there would be a joint access approach where this approach would be slightly widened to then allow for the access to continue on the north side of the existing driveway. Doesn't mean that they have to build the driveway. It just means that we've now actually provided access out to the county road allowance. They could still have an agreement registered against the titles, both titles, that would allow the proposed subdivision to continue to use the established part of the road. But what it would do is, if somewhere down the line, if there was a dispute between the current landowner and the proposed subdivision landowner, that at least there's still access out to the point of access where the county road allowance is on the west side of the quarter section, and then they would still basically utilize the rest of the established private driveway. And that way there would be, at this point, no requirement to actually build any further private driveway, but at least it would be there in the event that it's ever needed in the future. And like I say, in the meantime, an agreement could be just registered between the two landowners to use that small portion of that portion of the private driveway. And then at least from here all the way to the quarter section line, the subdivision is created to make sure and ensure that, you know, there wouldn't be those future disputes or those kind of things. So it's a consideration. I'm not saying it's the be-all, end-all for the solution to this, but it would certainly fit with the consistency of what we've required for subdivisions like this in the past, for the past 20 years. And it would, like I say, it would address any future problems, plus the fact of the matter is, I think then, you know, like I say, the existing private road up to the first building site could still be utilized with an agreement registered on the titles for that purpose, but there would then be at least full access all the way out to the road allowance, and it would address that as well. So that's one option, but I'm sure that there's maybe some other ideas or other considerations that could be considered as part of the first recommendation, which is part of the postponement.
Good point. The other issue I have, if that's included, if the panhandle is included in the subdivision, then all of a sudden we're landlocking this area from here, because, you know, I think I know it well enough. You can't go up into the trees and go around to that land with any equipment or anything like that. So
Correct.
that creates an issue.
Right,
So I
and
think that solves that problem.
Yeah, and so the agreement could be, anyway, through those agreements, you could basically, there's ways to make sure that we haven't landlocked the rest of the quarter section. There's, it's been done in the past, but anyway, I guess just throwing that out there as to try and be consistent with what we've done with other subdivisions for the past 20 years. The other concern, of course, is that, and I hate to use this because it does, this is a unique situation, so I want to be respectful of the applicant and this scenario, that it is somewhat unique. But having said that, it does kind of create a precedent that if we allow, or if we vary from what our practice has been in the past, which is making sure that the subdivision is connected to the public roadway and ensuring that it has direct and immediate access to the public roadway by being part of the subdivision, that it does set a precedent that other people could ask for similar scenarios when, especially when, they, and probably in the situation where, I'll be respectful here and say that probably the Russells never anticipated when this residence was originally built that this subdivision would come along at this point. So being that it's, much further into the quarter section, but I guess what we're fearful of is that, having the ability to construct a second residence or another residence somewhere on the quarter section that's deep into the quarter, and then all of a sudden, how are you going to get access out to the main road allowance, aside from just having a registered right-of-way? And so it does kind of set a precedence that if we do allow it, that it could allow for future similar types of situations in going ahead. So,
Thank you, Jeffrey. Go ahead, Kayleen.
So just a friendly reminder, if the Planning Commission opts to postpone, the applicants have to be in favor of the postponement. They could request that the Planning Commission make a decision today, and if that decision was refusal due to the access road, they have the ability to appeal that. So just a reminder, they have to be in favor of the postponing.
And they can't apply again if it's defeated for 3 months.
Correct, but they do have the ability to appeal to the DAB.
Yeah. I'm sure George is aware of all those, having sat on this side of the table before. Go ahead,
Got a
Mr. Monroe.
question?
Just 1 second.
So once again, I understand the access situation. I'm not sure that, like, if the access right away went from the start of the county road down to where the new house is going to be built, it's a longer distance, but if you're going to come in from the north-south quarter line a certain distance anyway, why not continue it through? I don't understand the landlock part, because there's legal access. There would be legal access going right through there. And I just wanted to reiterate that the access right-of-way agreement is registered with the access right-of-way plan as in condition 2 of approval. This is all taken care of. And I know land titles may have lost documents in the past, but it's not like that anymore. Their timelines are crappy, but other than that, when those documents get registered, they get put on the land title right away. And if there is no document with these recommendations for approval on here, if the document doesn't follow, the title's not, there is no title for the subdivision until these conditions are met. We don't get an endorsement either from the county to go to land titles to get a registration of a subdivision.
Thank you. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I see what George is, or what Brian's saying there. I guess if it doesn't come back until, nothing can be done until that paperwork's registered, then I don't see a problem with it. We're not trying to be hard to get along with. I think this is okay to subdivide this out. We're just trying to protect everything for the future in case of screw ups. So I guess if it's going to be registered properly, then I don't have a problem with it.
if I may, it will be registered right. That's for sure. I understand the county's perspective. It's something that might come up in the future, but as Brian said, land titles now has this all under control. There were issues in the past, but you know, we're going to have a legal, registered, shared access. Nothing's going to change in our operation. I know I can say that now, but who knows down the road what might happen. But I would just love this to go ahead as suggested with the access road agreement.
Go ahead. Oh, just hold on. You want to? He had a motion already. Did you have a motion to approve?
Yeah, plus, I just wanted.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So,
Well, I agree with Dan, and I agree with George. This is staying in the family, and if they have legal access, I don't have a problem with this neither. And I think it should be approved for the recommendation. So I make the motion.
okay, so you're moving approval basically is option number 3, right? Or option number 2? Okay, option number 2 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Your subdivision has been approved subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision approval date to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner after today's meeting. Thanks, George. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And I said we'll see you in 2 months. Hopefully it'll be easier than this one. Thank you.
That's nasty. I mean, if there's one thing, neighbors are going to fight, and you're guaranteed to fight with your family. You sticking around, Brian? Yeah, 11 o'clock, you've got Ferguson? Okay, and you're not here for Bayview. We've got Bindi. Are you Bindi? Okay, so, yeah. Bindi Bar, come on up, Bindi, and you can... Okay, so before us we have development application 22/138, Bayview Homes. Go ahead, Becky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So development application 22/138. The owner of the property is Meadowlands Development Corporation and the applicant is Bayview Homes Limited. This is at Plan 1612191, Block 11, Lot 6, and the property size is 866.8 meters squared. The existing land use classification is Recreation Residential Resort District. And the proposal is to construct a 1,635 square foot residence with an attached garage, covered rear deck and driveway with a setback relaxation of 6.1 meters or 20 feet from the rear property line. The applicant is requesting approval from the Municipal Planning Commission for the construction of a residence with a proposed setback distance of 1.52 meters or 5 feet from the rear property line. This results in a setback relaxation request of 6.1 meters or 20 feet. The construction is proposed to include an attached garage, covered rear deck, and a driveway. The total site coverage is proposed to be 41.4% and will meet the maximum amount permitted for the district. The application and site plan that has been submitted by the developer proposes that the front property line be considered as the side south to Dunes Link. In this case, all minimum required setbacks would be met. However, the land use bylaw defines the front property line as being the side in which the main entrance is located. In consideration of this, the front property line faces west to Dunes Way, in accordance with the land use bylaw. In this scenario, the development requires a setback relaxation to the rear property line. The proposed orientation of the home is consistent with the layout of other adjacent properties in this phase of Desert Bloom. As the letter of intent indicates, the applicant used careful consideration when selecting the design and orientation of the home, which includes for views of the park from the master bedroom and to allow for greater sunlight through the main areas of the home. The applicant has already attracted a potential buyer for this home due to its design and orientation. In accordance with section 16.6.1 of the Land Use Bylaw, the Development Authority shall review each development permit application and determine its compliance with this bylaw. When a development permit application includes variance requests or discretionary uses, the Development Authority shall assess the application as outlined based on the following criteria in accordance with section 646 of the MGA. A, does it unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land? Does the proposed development conforms with the use prescribed for that land or building in the Land Use Bylaw? So in the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, under the Recreation Residential Resort District, a residence is considered a permitted use provided the proposal complies with the minimum setback requirements of the district. The minimum rear yard setback for this district is 7.6 meters or 25 feet. In addition, it states that the maximum site coverage, including landscaping, is not to exceed 45% of the total lot area. In section 22, terms and words, corner lot means a lot having frontage on two or more streets and situated at an intersection. The front shall be considered the side in which the main entrance of the principal building is. And lot line front means the property line adjacent to the public roadway other than a lane, and in the case of more than one property line adjacent to the public roadway, the front property line shall be the direction that the front door of the building faces. So being that the property is in the tri-area IDP, I did circulate for comments, and we received no comments from City of Medicine Hat at the time of writing the report. The town of Red Cliff reviewed the proposed development permit application as forwarded and offers no comments. And Cypress County Public Works replied that they have no concerns. So I did go out and take a few pictures. So this is at the corner of the two streets looking at the property to the east. So this is looking north from Dunes Link. So the master bedroom side is proposed to face this direction towards Dunes Link. And then looking west at Dunes Way is potentially the front entrance is facing. So we're looking back the other way at the park, the neighboring property to the left. So I'll move on to my recommendation, and I have two for you today. So option one is to approve development permit application 22/138, subject to the following conditions and with the understanding that it will be constructed as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes must be submitted for approval by the development officer or municipal planning commission. So these are standard conditions for property in Desert Bloom. So 1 through 15 would be standard, with an addition of number 16, which is a setback relaxation of 6.1 meters or 20 feet from the rear property line for the proposed residence and covered deck. And option 2 is to refuse development permit application 22/138 as the proposal does not comply with the minimum setback requirements of 7.6 meters or 25 feet from the rear property line as stated in the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09 Recreation Residential Resort District. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Becky. Mr. Brow, would you like to speak to your application at this point?
Drafting and then so the main reason to get the sunlight through the house, like all the bedrooms, and including the basement. Even in the basement, living room, and both two other bedroom are going to have the sunlight. And the second reason would be the green space from the patio, master bedroom, and bedroom 2 on the main, and even in the basement. Those have a view from that side too. So these are two biggest reason. Yeah, and now so these are two main things. And also I got a potential buyer that's gonna interested in this design. So everything has been completed, but so if we need to change it, if it redesign the whole plan, everything, it's going to be put a negative impact on the financial loss and a delay, right? And it's going to I might have the hard time then.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thanks. Your letter was well written and it makes sense. So the back setback would be essentially the side setback, correct? Is what we're looking at. So, and that would fall within the typical side setback. It's just we're technically calling it the back. Okay. And from the view perspective, there's going to be houses across the way, anyways, is there not? So it's
Potentially, yes.
okay. So it's not really a view lot. It's not going to be a view lot at the end of the day.
Yeah, those lots across the street to the west are up for sale and can be applied for at any time.
Okay. Okay, open the floor to discussion.
Just one clarification, I guess, from Becky. So if this house had the exact same footprint, but the entranceway was on the other street, it would meet the requirements then?
Yeah, if the front entrance was on the south side facing Dunes Link, correct, it would meet all the setbacks.
Okay. Anything else? Dan, go ahead.
I'll move it.
Okay. So Dan moves approval of 22/138 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development application has been approved subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days from the date of the issue, the permit will become valid at that time. Any further questions, you may contact the development officer to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you, Mr. Barr.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Brian, you still hiding back there? Okay. Come on up. Okay, so next we have, are you Mr. Ferguson then? Oh, okay. So this is 22 CY12. Kayleen, do you want to take this one?
You bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we jump in, as mentioned, Steve Heed is here with Lacey Holmes, and then Brian Monroe is representing on behalf of the Fergusons. On the diagram that you see in front of you, I'll just take a moment to kind of explain what the proposal is here, and then I've also got a picture that I'll get Ingrid to pull up, and then we'll go further into the report here. So this is located within the hamlet of Dunmore. And the existing property line, it's a little bit faded to be able to see, but there's a property line here that cuts through essentially the detached shed that's existing. And what Global Raymac and the Fergusons are proposing to do is to extend the property line further to the east to expand essentially the lot area for lot 9 so that Lacey Homes can do a potential addition onto this home and would then be consolidated from lot 8. So that's what the overall intention is for the subdivision. And I'll get Ingrid just to pull up the one photo that I took. So you'll see there's actually a survey stake that was placed in the ground the day that I was out there. So this is where the existing property line boundary is located. As you can see, it cuts through the center of the detached shed. And essentially what would happen is the area where these bushes are located would then be consolidated into this lot. So that's what we're looking at today. So the intent is to subdivide and consolidate a 0.115 hectare or 0.37 acre portion from an existing Hamlet residential parcel for the purposes of creating a property boundary adjustment for a proposed garage addition. The landowner of the existing Lot 9 to the west intends to construct a 1,054 square foot addition onto the existing attached garage and requires for the property line to be extended further to the east to comply with the minimum side yard setbacks of the land use bylaw. And the proposed height of the addition is 17 feet. There's currently an existing 12 by 20 shed contained on Lot 9, which does not meet the setbacks of the land use bylaw and encroaches over property line into Lot 8. If the subdivision were to be approved, the garage addition permitted to be developed, this non-conforming shed would then be removed and or relocated to a different area on the property. The subdivision would result in approximately a 7-foot wide stretch of land being consolidated into Lot 9. Both existing parcels contain established residences and yards which were developed in the 1990s. In consideration of the applicant's proposed property line adjustment and development intentions, the surveyor has calculated the overall site coverage of Lot 9 to be 31.7% post-development. The applicant would be required to obtain separate development permit approval for the proposed garage, and there are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the area. The subdivision is located within the Dunmore Urban Services area of the Tri-Area IDP, as well as within the Dunmore Master Area Structure Plan. So South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are responsible for the planning and development processes that ensure land is available for development, such as residential, commercial, and industrial lands, municipal roads and water, and wastewater treatment facilities to accommodate population growth. Section 663 of the MGA states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a subdivision to provide reserve land or money in place of reserve land if the land to be subdivided is 0.8 hectares or less, or if reserve was previously provided in respect of the lands to be subdivided. Part 29 road access of the subdivision regulation states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road. And Part 14, distance from a highway, states that a subdivision authority shall not, in a municipality other than a city, approve an application for subdivision if the land is within 1.6 kilometers of the center line of a highway right-of-way, unless the land is contained within an area structure plan and the proposed use is permitted under that plan. Section 2.7.1, Policy Context of the Dunmore Urban Services Area of the IDP, states that the intent of the designation is to provide a secure future land base for the orderly expansion of the hamlet of Dunmore. And Section 4.4.19, alignment with the IDP of the MDP, states that the county shall follow all applicable policies within the IDP related to subdivision of the lands within the boundary. Section 5.1, Development Concept of the Dunmore Master Area Structure Plan, states that the concept recognizes the established development pattern within the existing hamlet and integrates compatible and complementary land uses to create a complete urban community while maintaining a distinct hamlet character. Section 7.1, Hamlet Residential District of the Land Use Bylaw, states that the minimum side yard setback for the principal building is 1.5 meters or 5 feet, and the maximum height is 12 meters or 39.4 feet, and maximum site coverage is 30% of the lot area. Section 11.9.1, Drainage and Site Coverage in Hamlet, states that site coverage shall be defined as the total percentage of the area covered by buildings and structures which are located at or above 1 meter or 3.3 feet grade, including accessory buildings and structures such as raised decks, porches, and covered terraces, and impervious surfaces such as driveways, drive aisles, or parking areas, but does not include steps, eaves, cornices, or similar minor projections permitted in the bylaw, or landscape areas and ground level patios. Section 11.9.7 states that the Development Authority may give consideration to a site coverage variance beyond the stated maximum where a development permit application is supported by a stormwater management plan prepared by an engineer, which retains stormwater runoff beyond the additional site coverage on the parcel. So the site coverage will be required to be addressed as part of the development permit application. And bylaw 2016-27 establishes the off-site levy to assist the county in the recovery of costs towards various infrastructure improvements within the hamlet over the next 25 years, and is calculated at $50,000 per hectare. The off-site levy reflected in the bylaw applies to all new subdivisions and development with respect to lands which require servicing, and utility easements may be required. When we circulated the application, Director of Municipal Services replied that the proposed subdivision complies with Section 2.7.1, Policy Context of the Dunmore Urban Services Area Policy of the IDP, as well as Section 5.1, Development Concept of the Master Area Structure Plan, and Section 4.4.19, Alignment with the IDP of the Municipal Development Plan. In addition, the proposed subdivision and lot boundary adjustment and consolidation is consistent with similar applications that have been approved in the past. TELUS replied that they have no objection. Apex replied that they have no objection. City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land and Government Relations replied that there are gas facilities within proximity to the proposed subdivision. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way or within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat gas wellhead, unless the developer applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for a setback reduction. And any ground disturbance or surface improvement within 30 meters of any of City of Medicine Hat gas pipeline requires a crossing or proximity agreement. Fortis replied that they're the distribution wire service provider for the area and no easement is required. City of Medicine Hat Electric Distribution Engineering replied that the proposed subdivision and consolidation may result in an encroachment of underground cable servicing, which services an adjacent title at 421 11th Street. If an encroachment exists, the city will require 3-meter utility right-of-way for the underground cable. Alberta Transportation replied that the proposal is contrary to Section 14 and subject to the requirements of Section 15.2 of the Subdivision and Development Regulation. Primary objective is to allow subdivision and development of properties in a manner that will not compromise the integrity and associated safe operational use or future expansion of the provincial highway network. To that end, this is merely a residential consolidation which currently and proposed will gain indirect access to the highway solely by way of the local road system. And it's not anticipated that the parcel for residential purposes would have any impact on the highway. And Alberta Transportation grants a waiver of Section 14 and 15.2. Town of Redcliffe replied that they have no comments. And at the June 7th council meeting, a resolution was passed that council waived the collection of the Dunmore off-site levy since the proposed subdivision does not create any additional lots and does not require an additional water service. So council, in advance of the Planning Commission making their decision on the subdivision, has waived collection of the levy under that bylaw. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is approval subject to 2 conditions. Number 1, the developer is required to provide written evidence from the City of Medicine Hat Electric Distribution Engineering that any necessary utility right-of-ways have been acquired prior to the subdivision's registration. And number 2, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements. That is my report.
Thank you, Kayleen. Brian, would you like to speak on behalf of the applicant to the conditions presented?
Yeah, I think we're okay with the conditions. Absolutely. City Electric, there is no utility right-of-way on the lots themselves as there usually would be, like 3.5 meters. So the electrical service has got to be in the road right-of-way, in the street. So there could be a possibility that it may cross the new property line, but when we go out to finish the survey, we'll sweep for the utility and locate it and find out exactly where it is. And from in the past, it could end up, if it is in there, it's probably just a 3-meter by 3-meter utility right-of-way, and it won't have any bearing on the addition to the garage.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay. So Jeremy moves approval of subdivision application 22 CY12 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivision surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's date of approval to have met the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. Dan, we're going to have a couple-minute break.
Okay, thanks.
mind taking the chairs up front, please? Is Dan here? We'll just wait shortly for Dan to come back, I would imagine. Oh, roger that. You talking to Dan? Yeah. Is he coming back to us? Yeah. Okay. Oh, he's there? Okay, so before us we have Janet Jolly and Kirk Arsenault. And this is development application 22-144. Becky, go ahead, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you said, development application 22/144. The owner applicant is Janet Jolie and Kirk Arsenault. The legal description is Plan 3371X Block OT. Property size is 15.15 acres, and this is zoned Agricultural District 2. The proposal is to operate a microgreen novelty farm and campground. The applicant is proposing to operate a business in Cypress County for the Municipal Planning Commission's consideration. The business proposes to operate a microgreen novelty farm with crops consisting of garlic and lavender, as well as to operate a private campground. The microgreens are currently being sold in the Homestead Market and will be available at Co-op later this year. As the letter of intent states, on-site operations of the microgreen farm include weeding, bed prepping, watering, planting, and harvesting, while the campground proposes up to 12 gravel pads 24 feet wide for non-serviced campsites. The campground will include dedicated visitor parking, secure waste disposal bins, and a recreational area which is proposed to include a playground. The property currently has 2 acres dedicated to garlic and lavender crops. The applicant has a 24 horsepower Kubota tractor to be utilized for the business operations. It is anticipated that the applicants will be the main employees with the option to hire additional employees during harvest and camping season. The applicant is proposing 3 signs to be located along Highway 1, which fall under the jurisdiction of Alberta Transportation. The site currently gains access from an existing approach off Range Road 44 and is not located within 300 meters of a hamlet or country residential district. In the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, under the Agricultural District 2, a campground is considered a Class 1 discretionary use. Section 2.2.4b states that the development officer may approve applications which constitute a Class 1 discretionary use with or without conditions, or if desired, refer a Class 1 discretionary use to the Municipal Planning Commission for consideration. Section 12.5 Campgrounds states the following. The overall density of the campground shall be no more than 20 campsites per hectare, which is 8 campsites per acre. A minimum of 10% of the campground's gross area shall be set aside for common recreation use and shall be developed and maintained as a park, playground, or other usable outdoor space. Campgrounds shall be set back a minimum of 300 meters from any country residential district or the Cypress Hills Fringe District as measured from property boundary to property boundary. Campgrounds shall provide visitor parking in common areas within a campground property to the satisfaction of a development authority and 2 parking spaces on each campsite or for each cabin. All campgrounds and sites shall have clear access and identification acceptable to the development authority for the purposes of accommodating emergency, fire, and maintenance vehicles. All campsites shall be accessible by means of an access at least 3 meters or 9.84 feet in width where the access is for one-way traffic, or at least 6 meters in width where the access is for two-way traffic. Campgrounds containing campsites, cabins, or other structures used to accommodate campers are considered temporary accommodations, and consequently the maximum occupancy is 240 days per calendar year. So I did circulate the application. CP Rail has reviewed the proposed development permit application and offers no comments. Alberta Transportation replied that the proposed development falls within the permit area of a provincial highway as outlined in the Highways Development and Protection Act or regulation. The proposed development will require a roadside development permit from Alberta Transportation along with a more legible site plan and may be subject to additional requirements. Cypress County Public Works replied that the developer is required to obtain approval from Alberta Transportation for access from Highway 1 and any required setbacks. The access to the proposed development is paved and requires minor repairs such as crack and pothole filling should the development be approved. In addition, a road approach permit application is required to be submitted for approval by Cypress County Public Works for the existing approach from Range Road 44. So I got a couple of pictures. It's kind of tricky. So this is from the existing access approach facing east. So you can see Highway 1 on one side and the CP rail tracks on the other. And the proposed campground area is up towards where the trees are. And to the left, you can kind of see the garlic and lavender plot areas. So we're looking just a little bit more north at the current crops. And just tried to zoom in to closer to where the campground would be located. So this is from Range Road 44 looking south at Highway 1, and you can see the existing access approach. And just another look more to the east at the approach. I think that's it. So my recommendation, I have two options for you. Option 1 is to approve development permit application 21-144 subject to the following conditions and with the understanding the business will be operated as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes to the business must be submitted for approval by the development officer or municipal planning commission. I have 1 through 6, which are standard conditions. So I'll jump to number 7. It is the developer's responsibility to enter into a road use agreement where required by Cypress County Public Works. Number 8, subject to a maximum of 5 off-site employees. Number 9, the applicant is responsible to obtain approval from Alberta Transportation prior to commencement. A copy of the approval is to be submitted to the development officer. Number 10, no signs will be permitted without prior approval by Alberta Transportation. Number 11, no sewage disposal is to occur on site and the campers are required to utilize a sewage disposal facility off-site. Number 12, approvals for a maximum of 12 campsites. Any expansion to the campground will require prior approval by Cypress County. And number 13, subject to annual review. And option number 2, Mr. Chairman, is to postpone development permit application 22/144 to allow the applicant to submit further information in support of the proposed use. And that is my report.
Thank you very much, Becky. Would the applicants like to speak to the proposal at this time? Thanks, Ingrid. I should be
Sorry.
covering that.
So I do have the permit that we just received from the Minister of Transportation, as well as more legible maps so we can actually see what we're doing there and kind of using the space properly. So that's pretty much it.
So that's the old campground. I don't know. Maybe
Right.
Jeffrey remembers that. His old camp kitchen there.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the people, locals, were coming in and saying. They were telling us about it, and that's what kind of drummed the idea. Well, it's just sitting there. We should maybe think about it. So, yeah.
Now, question I have is water. You say you have a well.
Yeah.
Is that potable water then for the campers? Or?
It's not potable. At least, I mean, we can filter it, but currently we're not going to provide that. It'll be designated non-potable water for their RVs and so on, but until it's filtered, that's the way it's going to remain. So, unless that's a requirement, then
that's a question I have. Can you have a campground without potable water?
The land use bylaw doesn't have a requirement for that, but you can, I mean, there's plenty of campsites with non-service sites, but we don't, I guess we don't address it in the land use bylaw.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think it's a perfect spot for it. Good
I
stuff.
think so.
I like what you've done there.
Well, we're trying to make it green and trying to keep it as natural, but we're planting. We've got about, what do you got, 250 spruce. We've got at home seedlings ready to, we're going to nurture them, throw them in the ground, and then kind of get it. So eventually have that area nice and greened up. And yeah.
Green's a challenge there.
Yeah, it is. The garlic says so.
Okay. Any discussion? So I guess you were referring to further plans as to where the campsites are going to go and stuff like that? Like, is that what you were referring to when you said more, proposal for more information?
It was just an option if the board wished to see more and further information. So it's just an option for you if you felt there was missing information.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
If they're going to be equipment in a campground and they're still going to have to meet all of the applicable guidelines for setbacks and such, right? Or is this permit approving to say that they can just go ahead with however they feel?
So the applicant has submitted a site plan outlining where the campsites will be. So he would be responsible to abide by that site plan he's submitted, which does follow the setbacks. And Alberta Transportation might have their own setback requirements, which would be part of the permit that the applicant has in his hand.
Okay. Your neighbors being the highway and the railway track, really, there's not a lot of issues there.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more discussion? Nigel moves approval. Dan, did I miss you? Do you have anything? Okay. All right. So Nigel moves approval of development application 22/144 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of the development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be development permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If there's no appeals in that period of time, the development permit will become valid. If you have any further questions, you can contact the development officer after today to discuss them. Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Did I miss something? Oh, okay. All right. I have food on my face. Okay. All right. Do you remember that old camp kitchen there too?
Yes.
Eh? Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Visited it a few times.
Work. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Bullen is AWOL here. With him? All right, let's move with it then, okay? So this is 22 CY14, Benchmark Geomatics on behalf of Teresa Bullen. Go ahead, Kayleen.
Yeah, so we'll continue on in absence of the applicant, and I guess if there's something that needs to be further addressed, we can always look at postponing if need be, but we'll continue on. So subdivision application 22 CY14 is submitted by Benchmark Geomatics on behalf of Teresa Bullen. Property is located along Thelma Road, approximately 1 kilometer east of the Eagle Butte Road, and the land use classification is Agricultural District 2, and is intended to subdivide a 16.24 hectare or 40.14 acre agricultural parcel containing an existing residence and yard in order to create a separate title. The remainder of the quarter section is bisected by the forced road plans of Thelma Road and Range Road 33A. The applicant owns the remnant lands west of Range Road 33A, so there's the small portion to the west there. which also contains a developed residence, and the remnant lands owned south of Thelma Road are titled to a separate landowner. Proposed subdivision area and yard site appears to currently gain access to Thelma Road via an access easement which crosses the northeast of 21. So I'll just use the laser pointer here because it's a little bit hard to see on the color. So essentially what we have is Miss Bullen owns this portion east of 33A, and she also owns the portion west. So these two parcels are on one Alberta land title, and then this portion on the south side is a separate landowner, so already has its own separate title. So there's an existing residence on this parcel on the west side, which gains access from the Range Road. And then there's also an existing residence located on this parcel up in the northeast corner, and it gains access via an access easement, which comes from Thelma Road across here. There's your access easement. However, it appears that the subdivision area would also have the ability to gain access from a new approach from Thelma Road or from Range Road 33A. So it's not that this subdivision doesn't have an alternative access point, but probably site visibility in terms of the hills probably didn't lend itself easily to a different approach to be installed. The existing access easement also includes provisions for the applicant's supply and access to a water well, which delivers water for domestic use to the residents, contained within the proposed subdivision. So also included within the access right-of-way on the north quarter, the Bullen's water well is also located within that easement to supply water to the residents. The existing yard and access drive was established in the late 1990s under Development Permit 9686. In addition, the quarter section is identified by Alberta Culture and Tourism under the Historical Resources Act as having a high potential to contain either a natural or paleontological resource. There are no oil or gas wells in proximity, and of course is outside of the Tri-Area IDP boundary and within the boundary of the Cypress Hills Fringe Plan. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to retain an agricultural land base by reducing fragmentation and conversion of agricultural land. Maintaining an agricultural land base recognizes the value of agricultural land for sustainable growth, as well as providing an opportunity for expansion of agricultural production. Section 663 of the MGA states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a subdivision to provide reserve if the land is to be subdivided into lots of 16 hectares or more and is to be used for agricultural purposes. Part 29 road access of the subdivision regulation states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority. And Part 5.1, Application Referrals, states that the Deputy Minister of the Minister responsible for the Historical Resources Act must be referred to if the land that is subject of the application is adjacent to or contains land identified by the Historical Resources listing maintained by the Minister. Section 4.1.20, Subdivision and Agriculture of the Municipal Development Plan, states that the county may support the subdivision of an agricultural parcel that is fragmented by natural or man-made circumstances if the subdivided parcel can demonstrate legal and physical access to a public road and conforms to the minimum parcel size requirements in the land use bylaw and the county design guidelines and construction standards. Section 5.1, Goals and Objectives of the Cypress Hills Fringe Area Structure Plan, states that the current Agricultural District 2 land use classification allows some fragmentation to occur. Retaining the current land use classification is seen to balance the ability of the landowner to meet their family estate requirements while minimizing uncontrolled sprawl and preserving the ability for ranching to remain viable in the area. When we circulated the application, Cypress County Finances replied that there are no local improvement plans. Director of Municipal Services replied that the proposed subdivision complies with Section 4.1.20, Subdivision Agriculture of the MDP, to create a separate agricultural title that is fragmented by natural or man-made circumstances, which in this case, Range Road 33A creates a permanent physical barrier that separates the west and the east portions. Under the Cypress Hills Fringe Area Structure Plan, Section 2.3, Ecologically Sensitive Lands, the proposed subdivision property is identified as being nationally significant due to the types of vegetation contained within the area. Section 6.3.4, protection of better range and farmland. State land is considered better agricultural land when the land is considered capable of a stocking rate at 35 acres per head or better. A parcel must have 10 acres or more of land that is not considered to be better agricultural rangeland to allow for a higher intensity use. And the proposed subdivision property title is low quality rangeland, meaning it is less productive than 35 acres per head. Can breathe. Cypress County Utilities reply that they have no comments. Cypress County Public Works reply that the portion of the undeveloped road allowance to the east has been closed. The applicant's surveyor should confirm that illegal access to the proposed subdivision is not disrupted by the closure. In addition, there are steep hills in the area which limit access due to having appropriate sight lines. The existing approach to the proposed subdivision located west of Range Road 33A is not built to standard and may require improvements in the future. So just to speak to Public Works' comments, I've gone back and forth with the surveyor for the Bullens and have confirmed that it's not an issue, but I'll just let you know what their concern was. So where the access easement comes through, there's a portion of undeveloped road allowance that runs north and south. This portion of undeveloped road allowance was closed and was consolidated into the adjacent agricultural properties. So on the Alberta land title system, what the system shows in mapping is that the undeveloped road allowance is not existent, but it also shows a gap in the access right-of-way that crosses the quarter section line. So what we had to go and confirm is that although the undeveloped road allowance was closed, giving legal access, the access right-of-way that's registered still pushes through what was the undeveloped road allowance. So we wanted to make sure there wasn't a discontinuation in the access because of that closure. Cypress County Fire and Emergency Services replied that they have no concerns. TELUS replied that they have no objection. Equus replied that the proposed subdivision is outside of their service area. And Fortis Alberta replied that there is no easement required. So my recommendation is approval subject to 2 conditions. And in lieu of in consideration that we've got an access easement that's registered, my recommendation is for the developer to enter into a municipal services agreement with the county for the construction of a road approach to provide direct and immediate access from Range Road 33A to the proposed subdivision titles. And the agreement is to be registered and executed prior to the subdivision's registration. So that allows for, in the event something does happen in the future with that access right-of-way, the county has an interest by caveat saying that a new approach is required and it's going to be at their cost. And number 2, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements. That is my report.
Thank you, Kaden. I should have probably done this earlier, but since I'm in the notification area, I'm a landowner near there, so I'm going to recuse myself from this. So I'll hand it over to Jeremy to continue.
Thank you, Wade. I guess I'll open up to the floor to any discussion. Okay, I guess there's no discussion on this. Would any of you like to move? Okay, Lloyd moves to approve this following the conditions as cited. All in favor? Approved.
Try it again.
Approved subdivision application. So your subdivision has been approved subject to meeting the conditions which are previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You are advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not done so already. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all the approval conditions and to have the surveyed plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for the registration of a separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you. And we're going to welcome Wade back now.
You're gonna break for lunch now? Okay. All right, thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so that's it for our applicants this morning, but I will I think we could take care of a couple of things. Planners report. Any discussion regarding the planners report? I have a question. So the appeal that's been launched regarding the wind turbines at Hilda project. What's with that? Can you explain that, please, to us?
So we received notification from the Land and Property Rights Tribunal that a landowner adjacent to, and from our understanding outside of the project area, has appealed the issuance of the development permits. So because the approval is subsequent to an approval of the Alberta Utilities Commission, the tribunal is the body that has to hear the appeal. So as part of the process, Becky, acting on behalf of the Development Authority, being the Planning Commission, will make presentation at that tribunal hearing, essentially saying why the Planning Commission made the decision that it did, subject to approving the application. We know that the MGA essentially mandates that we need to. So it'll probably be that we are recommending for the conditions that the MPC imposed in order to reduce potential nuisances to adjacent landowners in terms of dust and traffic and those sorts of things. So hearing is scheduled for the 30th of June. I think the 30th. Yeah. And it'll be a virtual hearing that we'll be attending.
So is there public disclosure of this appeal available to anyone interested in reading it?
I'm not sure. As part of the notification from the tribunal, there was certain parties that the tribunal notified. So being the county being the decision maker, of course Hilda Wind would be the developer, the appellant, and then I think anybody that was part of the decision. So anybody that was circulated to as part of the county's decision, including Alberta Transportation, they would be notified. But I'm not sure if the general vicinity, I'm not sure if they notify everybody.
Do they have a website like the AUC where they talk about where they present the land tribunal? Do we know of that? So
it is very difficult to find any information on their website about process.
Really?
Very difficult. I think.
Yeah. So but it's public knowledge. Everything.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Thanks for the information on the and pictures. The 41 is a nightmare right now with those trucks. We've been hauling cattle out south there, and it's between the campers and the cement trucks. Oh boy, we'll be lucky if we get out of this summer without a big time accident. It's crazy. I never envisioned it would be that much traffic attributed to these things. But holy smokes. You did? Oh. I mean, I don't... Lots of complaints of the traffic? Yeah. Oh.
Because they have signs up on 550 denying access to the cement trucks.
Right.
Let's go up to 41.
And if I recall correctly, I think most of the traffic was being directed to the provincial highway, being Highway 41, to avoid Eagle Butte Road, right? Because portions of that are dust control patches and oil, and of course lots of residential in and around that area, so they were directed to avoid that road, so it only really leaves the 41.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's being concentrated to that area.
This time of year, the 41's insane as it is.
Yeah.
And then some of the aggregates coming out of Bow Island even. So. It's interesting. Any discussion regarding the planner's report? Jeremy movement? Jeremy moves acceptance of the planner's report as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, land use amendments, any discussion regarding the proposed land use amendments? Any discussion regarding the development applications for viewing?
I'll move them all.
Good job, Dan. Dan moves approval of the land use amendments and, well, let's do them first. Land use amendments. All those in favor? Carried. Dan moves approval of the viewing. I don't think we have to move this. I don't even know if we have to do the land amendments, do we? That's what I didn't think, so. Thanks anyways, Dan.
You made him feel welcome.
We know you're not sleeping at least.
He just woke up.
Okay, so any other discussion? Well, I think that's it for this morning. So we're going to break for lunch now? He's here. We're going to call the meeting back to order. Next is Mr. So 22 CY15. Ken, do you have a representative with you as well? Is that your group? Okay, do you want to just take the chairs up front here? Okay, so this is subdivision application 22 CY15. Kayleen, do you want to go ahead with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll maybe just ask the applicant, the landowner, and his representation that he has with him to do an introduction of themselves for the minutes. And then we also recognize that Adam Thompson with Benchmark Geomatics is on the line electronically as well. So we'll note Mr. Thompson in our minutes as well. So Ken, just push the green button or the gray button in front of you.
Yeah, Ken McPhail, landowner of the application.
Hi, my name is Chad Miller. I'm the lead for strategy and projects for Bevo Farms, a plant propagator in Langley, British Columbia, and we're the conditional buyer on the property.
Keith Viss, I'm here with Bevo just to kind of be their local point man for this project if it goes forward. So,
okay. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Kayleen.
Okay, so subdivision application 22 CY15 is submitted by Benchmark Geomatics on behalf of Ken and Brenda McPhail. Property is located along Range Road 55, immediately north of Township Road 120, and 2.6 kilometers south of the City of Medicine Hat boundary, within the east half of Section 6, Township 12, Range 5, west of the 4th Meridian. And the land use classification is Agricultural District 1 IDP. And the application is intended to subdivide a 17.9 hectare or 42.48 acre agricultural parcel cut off from the remainder of the agricultural title by a drainage canal right-of-way for the landowner to sell. Purpose of the subdivision is to allow for the sale of the proposed parcel to Bevo Farms Limited, who desire to develop and operate a propagation greenhouse on the subject lands. The area of the subdivision is currently contained on the same Alberta land title as the remnant lands north of the drainage canal right-of-way, and the owner wishes to separate the titles in effort to only sell the portions south of the drainage canal. The existing agricultural title contains an irrigation pivot and will continue to gain direct and immediate access from Range Road 55, and there are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the proposed subdivision. So before we go any further, I'll maybe just use my laser pointer behind you gentlemen just to explain briefly to the Planning Commission what this subdivision is proposing. So of course, Range Road 55, you've got located on the east side here, and we've got a SMRID drainage ditch that runs east-west through the parcel. So the area that's north of the drainage ditch is currently contained on the same Alberta land title as the south portion. So Mr. McPhail is proposing to subdivide this portion from the north half, and then there would be a subsequent consolidation of these two parcels to create one title south of the SMRID drainage ditch. So although the intent is for a propagation greenhouse to be developed upon the lands, the applicant is only requesting subdivision approval at this time. All aspects of the business will be addressed under a development permit application, which is to be applied for separately by Bevo Farms. Therefore, administration considers this solely a subdivision application to separate the lands due to an involuntary severance caused by the drainage canal right-of-way. If the subdivision is to be approved and subsequently registered with Alberta land titles, the subdivided portion would be consolidated with the agricultural lands to the west, which also contains an established yard and mobile home. So that's the consolidation I spoke to just briefly there. A residence is still eligible to be constructed on the agricultural title. The proposed subdivision is within the potential service commercial industrial area of the IDP, as well as the Township Road 120 area structure plan. South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that maintaining an agricultural land base recognizes the value of agricultural land for sustainable growth and diversification of the agricultural industry, as well as providing an opportunity for expansion of agricultural production and value-added agribusiness in the region. Section 663 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of a parcel of land subject of a subdivision to provide reserve if the land is to be subdivided into lots containing 16 hectares or more and is to be used for agricultural purposes. Part 2.9 Road Access of the Subdivision Regulation states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority. Section 2.8, Potential Service Commercial Industrial Area of the IDP, states that the intent of the area is to provide a long-term location for highway commercial and light industrial uses. Highway commercial and light industrial uses may have unavoidable nuisance factors. However, applications for uses within 200 meters of an existing dwelling is a development consideration of the county. Developers are expected to work with nearby residential landowners to identify what visual mitigations can be offered for the existing residences. Section 4.1.20, Subdivision in the Tri-Area IDP, states that the county may support the subdivision of an agricultural parcel that is fragmented by natural or man-made circumstances if the subdivision parcel can demonstrate legal and physical access to a public road, conforms to the minimum parcel size requirements in the land use bylaw, and complies with the county's design guidelines and construction standards. Section 4.1.24, Subdivision in the Tri-Area IDP, states that the county shall follow all applicable policies within the IDP boundary related to subdivision of lands within that boundary. Section 3, Development Concept of the Township Road 120 Area Structure Plan, states that it is envisioned that the types of commercial light industrial uses that will locate along Township Road 120 will be businesses that require larger tracts of land with limited services, and heavy industrial use is not considered appropriate in the area. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the agricultural title. My voice today, excuse me. When we circulated the application, Cypress County Finances replied that there is a local improvement for the Westside Water Co-op attached to the parcel. However, the balance has been prepaid and there's no balance owing to the county. Director of Municipal Services replied that the intent of the proposed subdivision is to separate an existing agricultural title by means of a permanent physical barrier being the Smurd Drainage Canal right-of-way for the purposes of continuing agricultural use for both proposed parcels. Therefore, the subdivision complies with Section 4.1.20 of the Municipal Development Plan. Cypress County Utilities replied that there are no conflicts with Cypress County infrastructure. However, there are Westside Water Co-op lines in the area. Cypress County Public Works replied that a new access approach will be required from Range Road 55 and will be required to be paved to property line as per the design guidelines and construction standards. TELUS Communications replied that they have no objection. Fortis replied that they are the distribution wire provider for the area. No easement is required. Equus replied that they have no concerns. City Medicine Hat Electric replied that the subdivision is outside of their service area and they have no concern. Apex or AltaGas replies that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision. Any relocation of existing facilities will be at the expense of the developer, and payment contributions required for new gas facilities is the responsibility of the developer. City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land and Government Relations replied that there are gas facilities within proximity to the subdivision. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way and within 100 meters of any of City of Medicine Hat wellhead, unless the landowner applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the City for a setback reduction. All ground disturbance or surface improvements within 30 meters of any of City of Medicine Hat pipeline or within 100 meters of any gas well requires a crossing and proximity agreement. SMRID replied that they do not have any objection to the proposed subdivision, provided that the permanent irrigation acres are removed to reflect the area of irrigated farmland being displaced due to the proposed greenhouse development. In addition, if the proposed development wishes to use water supplied by the district, they will need to purchase an allotment of other use water at the current rate of $1,200 per acre foot plus GST. Developer would be required to install a water meter at the point of delivery and will be subject to an annual charge. Furthermore, if the development does not intend to utilize the existing turnout, a new turnout will need to be installed at their cost, along with a dugout to be constructed to trickle fill for the winter months. The developer will be required to provide the district with a yearly volume to trickle fill the dugout at the end of the irrigation season. Westside Water Co-op replied that the co-op has 2 water lines contained within the parcel and that they require a 10-meter setback minimum from the lines for maintenance and repairs. Canadian Pacific Railway replied that they have no comments. And Alberta Transportation replied that pursuant to Section 55D of the Subdivision and Development Regulation, Alberta Transportation is not a required referral. However, their primary objective is to allow subdivision and development to properties in a manner that will not compromise the integrity and safe operational use or future expansion of the highway system. To that end, the applicant is advised that Highways 1 and 3 form an integral part of the national highway system, of which the ultimate service classification is freeway. Given this, Alberta Transportation's long-range freeway access management plans include a realignment of Highways 1 and 3 in the vicinity of the city of Medicine Hat. Alberta Transportation has endorsed the Highways 1 and 3 Network Functional Planning Study Future Realignment, which identifies an alignment and right-of-way requirements for the future corridor. The applicant would also be advised that any development within the right-of-way, within 300 meters beyond the limit of the highway, or within 800 meters from the center point of the intersection of the highway and another highway, requires the benefit of a permit from Alberta Transportation. And finally, Town of Redcliffe replied that they have no comments. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is approval, subject to 3 conditions. Condition number 1, the developer is required to enter into a municipal services agreement with the county for the construction of a paved road approach to provide direct and immediate access from Range Road 55 to the proposed subdivision. The services agreement is to be executed and registered in conjunction with the subdivision at Alberta land titles. So the value in this is that it requires the installation of the access approach. However, it delays the placement of the approach to Bevo Farms' development application based on their internal roads and operations. Condition number 2, it is the developer's responsibility to enter into any necessary agreements with the SMRID for the supply of water to the proposed subdivision, and that they're required to provide written evidence that any requirements of SMRID have been satisfied prior to the subdivision's registration. And number 3 is the standard condition for the developer to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements. That is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Kayleen. Ken, would you or your representatives like to speak to your application at this time?
Not particularly. Maybe a little bit. Just that I think that it is this on?
Yep.
Okay.
If the light's on, it's on.
Yeah. I just think it fits the area in terms of diversifying agriculture. It is obviously a broken piece of ground, so to speak. We've got broken fields in that area, and I think it's suitable, and it's as an agricultural upgrade or diversification, I guess, that I think suits the community, and it also fits in with the other greenhouse industries around here where they propagate for those for that industry.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add that for a bit of context, I'm going to try not to steal my own thunder for when an actual development application comes through. But contextually, so Bevo is a plant propagator. We currently service the entire greenhouse area already, but we do it via truck from Langley, British Columbia. So there's a keen mutual interest between us and the local industry to do that locally, and I look forward to presenting that obviously in a much more formal way when the time's right.
Thank you. All right. Any discussion from Planning Commission? Yeah, I like the amalgamation part of it. It makes sense if you're going to amalgamate those two pieces. Like, you currently have one pivot servicing those two parcels right now anyway, correct? So I mean, from a land use perspective, it works good for me. I think that's a good idea, so I have no problems with it.
And, you know, greenhouses fit the usage anyways. I hate taking out irrigated land to put houses on, but for greenhouses, that's, you know, at least it's being in agricultural production still. So, any other discussion? You're okay with the planner's conditions? Yeah. Okay. All right. So Lloyd moves approval of 22 CY15 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision approval has been your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You are advised to begin working towards the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved area, subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's date of approval to have met all the conditions and have the survey plan submitted to land titles by your surveyor. If you have any further questions, contact the planner after today to discuss them. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, next on the agenda today is 22 CY09, Benchmark Geomatics on behalf of UFA. I would suspect the people in the room are representatives for that. Okay, would you take the chairs up front, please? Come on up. So if you can start by please introducing yourself and then we'll move forward. Yeah, push the button there to talk.
I'm Liam Whitelaw, project manager at UFA.
Mark Hasegawa with Hasegawa Engineering.
Penny Mastel, I'm manager of the UFA in Medicine Hat for petroleum.
Okay, thank you. All right, so 22 CY09, go ahead, Kayleen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm praying my voice holds out, but if I take intermittent gaps because of my throat here, so I'll try my best. Subdivision application 22 CY09 is submitted by Benchmark Geomatics on behalf of UFA. The property is located along Township Road 120, immediately south of the Trans-Canada Highway and within the hamlet of Dunmore. Legal land description west half of 6, 12-4 west of the 4th meridian. And the land use classification is Highway Commercial District. The application is intended to subdivide an existing 51.6 hectare or 127.51 acre parcel containing cultivated cropland to create a 6-lot highway commercial subdivision to be developed by UFA. The overall subdivision area would contain approximately 23.05 acres, and the intent is currently for the remainder of the parcel further to the south to remain as agriculture. The property is located along Township Road 120, immediately south of Trans-Canada Highway, within the hamlet of Dunmore. The property currently gains direct and immediate access from an existing road approach from Township Road 120. UFA has recently acquired the lands from the Fileskis and now intend to develop the subdivision, which also includes a site for a UFA card lock and bulk fuel station. Administration has been in ongoing discussions with UFA and its representatives relating to the county's recent purchase of the lands to the west and to identify any potential for synergies between the projects in terms of access and utility servicing. The hamlet of Dunmore was recently extended to include the proposed lands. Therefore, the lots will be required to be serviced with water from the hamlet of Dunmore. As no sewer collection exists in the area, sanitary sewage disposal will be required to be managed via on-site private sewage disposal fields and tanks. The developer retained an engineer to complete a geotechnical analysis for the lands and are aware that they need to complete a functional servicing analysis for water and sewer servicing, fire suppression, a stormwater management plan, and traffic impact assessment as a condition of subdivision approval. The developer will also be required to obtain the services of an engineer for the overall subdivision design to be reviewed and accepted by the county, to also include any areas to be dedicated to municipal reserve, and to ensure that the subdivision is designed and developed in accordance with the county's design guidelines and construction standards. The proposed subdivision is located within the Dunmore Urban Services area of the IDP, the Dunmore Master Area Structure Plan, as well as the Gasoline Alley Area Structure Plan. And all of these plans align to encourage commercial and industrial development within the area. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are responsible for the planning and development processes that ensure land is available for development such as residential, commercial, and industrial lands, municipal roads and water and wastewater treatment facilities to accommodate population growth. Decision makers in the region will need to deliberately cooperate and coordinate their planning to meet the physical and social infrastructure needs of their communities and to ensure quality of life for all residents is enhanced in thriving urban and rural communities. Section 6551 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may impose a condition that the applicant enter into an agreement with the municipality for any of the following: to construct or pay for the construction of a road required to give access to the subdivision, to construct or pay for the construction of a pedestrian walkway system to serve the subdivision or to connect to an adjacent subdivision, to install or pay for the installation of a public utility that is necessary to serve the subdivision, to pay an off-site levy imposed by bylaw, and to give security to ensure that the terms of the agreement are carried out. The municipality may register a caveat under the Land Titles Act in respect of an agreement against the certificate of title of the land that is subject of the subdivision. If a municipality registers a caveat, it must be discharged once the caveat agreement has been complied with. Section 6661 states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land subject of a subdivision to provide part of that parcel as municipal reserve, to provide money in place of municipal reserve, or any combination of municipal reserve and money in place of reserve. Part 2.9 Road Access of the Subdivision Regulation states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot created. Part 14, Distance from a highway, states that a subdivision authority shall not, in a municipality other than a city, approve an application for subdivision if the land is within 1.6 kilometers of the center line of a highway right-of-way, unless the land is contained within an area structure plan and the proposed use is permitted under that plan. And Part 16 waiver states that the requirements of Section 14 may be varied by a subdivision authority with the written approval of the Minister of Transportation. The Dunmore Urban Services Area of the Tri-Area IDP states that the IDP strategy envisions Dunmore as an alternative residential, commercial, and industrial option in which to live and work in the region. The intent of the area is to provide a secure future land base for the orderly expansion of the hamlet of Dunmore. And as development proceeds, the county shall redesignate the official boundary of the hamlet in accordance with the IDP and its policies as applications arrive within the plan area. Section 4.1.24, Subdivision in the Tri-Area IDP of the Municipal Development Plan, states that the county shall follow all applicable policies within the IDP related to the subdivision of lands within the boundary. And Section 4.2, Local Services, states that the county will encourage light industrial, commercial, and institutional uses to locate in county hamlets, communities, and other accessible locations to provide for everyday needs of area residents and businesses and opportunities for local employment where compatible with adjacent uses. The Dunmore Master Area Structure Plan states that the commercial industrial lands are located adjacent to the CPR Railway and the Trans-Canada Highway and Highway 41. The combination of commercial and light industrial uses is seen as compatible. It is not expected that heavy industrial uses will be developed within the commercial industrial designated areas. Anticipated uses include highway commercial and light industrial. Highways create attractive location for commercial businesses due to visibility and access. The future Trans-Canada Highway bypass and interchange is anticipated over the long term to create significant demand for regional commercial development. The Gasoline Alley Area Structure Plan states that the ASP intends to capitalize on the locational advantage of the lands by providing opportunities for industrial, commercial, and employment-driven land uses, while recognizing the future realignment for Highway 1, including a focus on a mix of business and industrial lot sizes, high visibility business exposure, excellent commercial access, adequate transition between existing non-industrial uses, addressing and planning for stormwater management requirements, maintaining existing topography and site drainage, and servicing with water and on-site septic storage with potential for full urban servicing. The Gasoline Alley Area Structure Plan boundary is uniquely situated at the intersection of two significant provincial highways, being Highway 1 and Highway 41. These two highways provide increased exposure to the plan area and have excellent vehicle capacity. The design of required roadway widenings will be determined at the time of the subdivision and designed in accordance with Alberta in terms of supporting the growth of hamlets, as well as Section 5.1 development concept of the Dunmore Master Area Structure Plan for commercial and industrial growth for Dunmore. Also Section 4.2 land use categories of the Gasoline Alley Area Structure Plan, identifying appropriate commercial industrial areas to accommodate future development. Therefore, the subdivision warrants approval consideration subject to the planner's recommendations and that the developer be required to provide the following as a condition of approval. A functional servicing report, a grading and stormwater management report, biophysical, a geotechnical, historical resources investigation, a traffic impact assessment, payment for money in place of reserve, and payment of the Dunmore offsite levy. Cypress County Utilities replied that the subdivision area has been incorporated into the hamlet of Dunmore boundaries. Therefore, the department will need to size a line appropriate for the development needs. In consideration of this, future area structure plans will need to be examined to find the best alignment to get a water line to the proposed subdivision. Developer will be responsible to install their own septic system and obtain any necessary approvals from Alberta Environment and Parks. Cypress County Public Works replied that traffic impact assessment is required for the entire subdivision area. The access point will require Alberta Transportation approval for setbacks from the Trans-Canada Highway for an appropriate staging area, around 150 meters. A stormwater management plan review may require drainage easement to be established along the east boundary for drainage to the Trans-Canada Highway. Any improvements will be required to align with the county's East Dunmore Transportation Plan. In addition, the subdivision design should accommodate a 30-meter wide road right-of-way for the internal service road to support the Cypress County design guidelines and construction standards. Cypress County Fire and Emergency Services replied that they do not have any concerns, and TELUS replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision, however advised that a utility right-of-way will be required to protect future facilities. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision and advised that they have no facilities within the area. The developer is encouraged to notify Alberta One Call to arrange for field locates should excavations be required within the area. In addition, any relocation of existing facilities will be at the expense of the developer, and payment contributions required for new facilities is the responsibility of the developer. Fortis Alberta replied that they're the distribution wire service provider for the area. No easement is required. City of Medicine Hat Electric replied that they have no concerns as the subdivision is outside of their service area. City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land and Government Relations replied that there are gas facilities within proximity to the proposed subdivision. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way or within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat wellhead, unless the developer applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for a setback reduction. And any improvements within 30 meters will require a crossing or proximity agreement. Alberta Transportation replied that the proposal is subject to contrary to Section 14 and subject to the requirements of Section 15.2 of the Subdivision and Development Regulation. Alberta Transportation's primary objective is to allow subdivision and development of properties in a manner that will not compromise the integrity and safe operational use or the future expansion of the highway network. To that end, considering the types and additional volumes of traffic that may be generated by the proposed parcels, combined with the existing local traffic volumes in correlation with the background traffic, strictly from Alberta Transportation's point of view, this application has insufficient information to properly assess the impact on the highways. In lieu of the area structure plans available by Section 14E of the regulation, Alberta Transportation is prepared to accept a traffic impact assessment to support and qualify this application. The assessment is necessary to ascertain whether the existing at-grade intersection at Highway 1 and 41 and Township Road 120 is adequate to safeguard the highway, as an efficient, free-flowing transportation facility while absorbing the additional traffic that will be generated by the proposed development. Given the foregoing, Alberta Transportation recommends that the applicant retain a consulting firm with sufficient transportation expertise to study and qualify this application via an impact assessment. If the assessment should include the additional parcels being proposed at full build-out, if an assessment bears out the requirements of remediation to the existing intersection, the design and construction would be to the satisfaction of and accomplished at no cost to transportation. Therefore, subject to the aforementioned TIA, Alberta Transportation grants a waiver of Section 14 with written verification that the assessment is satisfactory to transportation prior to the endorsement of the final LIBNN by the approval authority. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the applicant would be advised that any development within 300 meters of the limit of a controlled highway or within 800 meters from the center point of an intersection of a controlled highway and a public road would require the permit from Alberta Transportation. Pursuant to Section 622 of the MGA, Alberta Municipal Affairs developed the provincial land use policies. Section 7, Transportation, encourages municipalities to contribute to a safe, efficient, and cost-effective provincial transportation network. Moreover, municipalities are further encouraged to minimize negative interaction between transportation corridors and facilities and their surrounding areas and land uses through the establishment of compatible land use patterns. Alberta Transportation wishes to affirm its strong commitment to supporting this provincial policy with respect to the provincial highway system. In situations where development and land use patterns have the potential to negatively impact the safe and efficient operation of a highway, mitigating measures and costs associated necessary to maintain the highway operation shall be considered at a cost of and responsibility of the municipality/developer. Alberta Transportation accepts no responsibility for the noise impact of highway traffic upon any development or occupants. Noise impact and the need for attenuation should be thoroughly assessed, and the applicant is advised that provisions for noise attenuation are the responsibility of the developer and should be incorporated as required into the subdivision development stage. Any peripheral lighting that may be considered a distraction to the motoring public or deemed to create a traffic hazard will not be permitted. Town of Redcliffe replied that they have no comments. And finally, the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $25,959.52 per hectare for money in place of reserve purposes. So my recommendation, Mr. Chairman, is approval. I'm almost there. Subject to 7 conditions. As a requirement of Alberta Transportation and in accordance with the Subdivision and Development Regulation, developer is required to submit a detailed traffic impact assessment for review and acceptance by Alberta Transportation and the county. The developer is required to provide written verification to the county that a satisfactory assessment has been provided to and accepted by Alberta Transportation prior to the subdivision's registration. I've also okayed that approval condition with AT and they're fine with it. Number 2, the developer is required to enter into a servicing agreement with Cypress County and be in compliance with the terms of the agreement for the construction of an engineer-designed paved internal service road, supply of all necessary private and municipal utilities, municipal water provided through the county's distribution system, street lighting, street signs, and traffic control devices, lot grading, providing sufficient on-site water storage for fire suppression that meets the Alberta Building Code, stormwater management plan that complies with the stormwater management plan for Dunmore and contains stormwater runoff for a 1 in 100 year storm event for the subdivision area, to provide for erosion control measures during construction, to provide security in the form of an irrevocable letter of credit, and for payment of the Dunmore offsite levy. The agreement is to be registered against all of the affected lots and titles associated with the subdivision at the time of the registration with Alberta Land Titles. Developers shall retain the services of a professional engineer who shall be responsible for the design and preparation of drawings and specifications for all infrastructure and municipal improvements. Number 3, the developer is required to provide and register a utility right-of-way located within the frontage of each commercial lot within the subdivision to a minimum width of 3.5 meters. Number 4, the developer is required to provide an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of 150% of the developer's engineer's calculated construction value in accordance with the Cypress County Design Guidelines and Construction Standards, and is required to be provided to the county prior to registration. Number 5, the developer is required to make a payment to the county as required under Bylaw 2016-27, which establishes the off-site levy within the hamlet of Dunmore at a rate of $50,000 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with land titles unless otherwise approved by the county. Number 6, the developer is required to provide as part of the overall subdivision design either land dedication for the purposes of reserve, or is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of reserve, or is required to provide a combination of land and money in place of reserve, not to exceed 10% of the total subdivision area. And lastly, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are required for any affected utilities. That is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Kayleen. Well done. Okay, would the applicant like to speak to this subdivision at this time?
We don't have much to add, but thank you, Kayleen. We've worked closely with Kayleen on this, and we agree to all the conditions.
Okay. Open the floor to discussion from the Planning Commission. Jeremy?
Oh, you guys hit pretty much all the points there. The only one that I'm, I guess, concerned about is the one with the traffic access to the subdivision. I know that that's a fairly busy intersection, and with the card lock and stuff proposed there, like there's going to be lots of big trucks coming in and out, and I just want to make sure that that one is covered off, because we don't need any more congestion, I guess, in those corners.
So we did have Bunt Engineering do the traffic impact assessment, and they do a lot of them. That's kind of their specialty. So we've been working with them and AT on the traffic. And the way we ended up doing this is kind of unique in that we did the TIA initially just for the UFA site. And what the results come back is what they basically do on the TIA is they look at the traffic on the highway and the added traffic that comes in and out of the site, and they took some site-specific information from different UFA sites, added a factor of safety, and then figured out what those traffic numbers are. And then they look at the potential conflict by, okay, what's the frequency of cars coming up, making right turns out, left turns in, right turns in, and that sort of thing. And they look at the geometry of what the intersection is, and they say, okay, here's, based on this kind of potential conflict, here's the potential for additional, accidents or conflicts, wait times. What happens is if the wait times start getting too long, people get frustrated and they start making risky decisions. That's kind of one thing that happens in these kinds of intersections. So when it's just the UFA by itself, they don't recommend any improvements. But what's going to happen though is when this subdivision goes forward, especially and then when we did the analysis with an industrial subdivision, it didn't make that much difference because industrial subdivisions aren't that high a traffic compared to commercial. But they did run some numbers with highway commercial numbers, and say, for example, you just put one Tim Hortons there, it trips all kinds of improvements, like turning lanes. And so one of the things they do is there's type 1 through type 4 intersections, and then depending on how much conflict you see in the movements of traffic, type 4 is like really long turning lanes and adding turning lanes on both sides, so deceleration lanes and acceleration lanes on both lanes of traffic on the highway. So when you start, I think it ended up being that when you start going to highway commercial, the kind of traffic that generates is that intersection is going to need improvements. But I think what's going to happen too is now that there's this development going on the south side of the highway, eventually the south side of the range road, which is when they both start getting implemented, there's going to be a need for more improvements to that intersection. And so what we've done, I guess, worked with Becky and Kayleen, is that as this goes along, there's going to be another traffic impact assessment that needs to be done as this gets further developed, and then those improvements are going to happen eventually. That was kind of a long-winded answer. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
I realize it's just for the proposed subdivision today, but I guess we're looking into the future, right?
More discussion. Kayleen, go ahead.
So just so that the Planning Commission is aware as well, I'm not entirely sure if everybody, the at-large members, are aware of the plans on the west side. So this is, of course, the area for UFA's proposed subdivision. And what has happened is that the county has acquired the lands west of Township Road 120. So Third Avenue essentially terminates at about this location, and the county, and that's why our engineer Ken Jacobs is here as well to speak to anything that he might have to add. But we're currently working with a consultant on a concept plan for the lands to the west, which would essentially include the extension of Third Avenue, which would tie in over to Township Road 120. So when we speak about synergies between the projects, the county has been having to work very closely with UFA and with Hasegawa Engineering in terms of even the traffic impact assessment that the county would have had to have done in terms of the concept plan as well. So there's kind of two separate moving projects that are ongoing at the same time.
All right. So are any concerns by the lay people on the Planning Commission are being addressed at this point in time, is what you're saying? Okay. All right. Good. Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, and I guess to the point that UFA was making is that back in about 2008 to 2010, 11, Bunt Engineering did actually do a traffic impact assessment at the request of Alberta Transportation for a commercial, what was supposed to be a proposed truck stop on the lands that the county now owns that Kayleen just illustrated. And at that time it was under private ownership, and so I imagine that Bunt Engineering is probably just, or at least the traffic impact assessment from that time will be considered and upgraded for current traffic needs and traffic assessment. But anyway, it was done at that time, and it will probably be integral, I would think, as part of this process and project.
One thing that will be, what we're hoping to do is continue to work synergistically, especially with things like the TIA, so that you don't have to go do three different consultants or three different versions, that you can just start. A lot of the groundwork has already been done, and you can just keep adding to it, and so then it's going to make it a lot easier and a lot more. It's going to give a better picture of what needs to be done at that intersection as far as when the further development happens. So we hope this is going to kind of benefit all parties.
Thank you. You're moving it? Okay, so Lloyd moves approval of 22CY09 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your subdivision has been approved. Subject to meeting conditions which were previously discussed, the county will mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you haven't already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all the approval conditions and have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles by your surveyor for registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you may contact the planner after today's meeting to discuss them. Okay, so now we move on to the development applications. So now we're dealing with 22-157. Sorry you don't get to read a little more today, but we're going to transfer over to somebody else.
Can you have Kayleen's voice arrest?
I thought she was getting emotional about a subdivision over there, but it wasn't.
Could happen at this point, right?
It could, yeah. All right, Becky, go ahead.
Okay, I'm hoping my report's a little shorter than Kayleen's for you. So development permit application 22-157. The applicant is Jordan Michelle on behalf of UFA Cooperative Limited. Legal description is Northwest 6, 12-4, west of the 4th, and property size is 127.51 acres. The existing land use classification is Agricultural District 1, and the proposal is to construct and operate a bulk fuel handling facility including above-ground bulk fuel storage, cardlock dispenser islands, an office or retail building, and a shipping receiving building. The applicant is proposing a business in Cypress County for the Municipal Planning Commission's consideration that specializes in bulk fuel sales. The business is proposed to be located within the hamlet of Dunmore at the corner of Highway 1 and Township Road 120. The proposal includes the construction of a 720 square foot office building, a 1,248 square foot shipping receiving building, as well as the placement of up to 725,000 kiloliter above ground storage tanks and fuel dispensers. As the letter of intent states, outdoor operations are anticipated to include cardlock and bulk fuel loading and unloading. Inside the two proposed structures will be administration, minor retail sales, and storage of packaged lubricants. UFA expects that traffic generated will include bulk fuel delivery trucks as well as passenger vehicles. The estimated daily traffic counts are 140 small vehicles and 50 large vehicles. Hours of operation will typically be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday, while the cardlock will be available 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. There will be 4 to 5 employees working at the location. A traffic impact assessment was prepared by Bunt and Associates on behalf of Hasegawa Engineering on May 16th of 2022. Section 6, Conclusion and Recommendation, states that majority of the site trips will pass through the intersection of Highway 41, Township Road 120, and Highway 1. No intersection improvements will be required at either of the study intersections at any horizon. This includes no additional illumination at the site access intersection. In March of 2022, Cypress County Council approved Land Use Bylaw Amendment 2022/06 to reclassify the subject property from Agricultural IDP District 1 to Highway Commercial District. However, the land use amendment will not be in effect until an approved subdivision has been registered with the Alberta Land Titles. Therefore, the applicant is applying for the proposed use under the existing A1 IDP land use district. The longer-term intent is for UFA to develop a 6-lot highway commercial subdivision. The consideration of this application allows UFA to proceed with their imminent development plans, while the subdivision approval, design, and servicing further advances. UFA and Cypress County have been in ongoing discussions in terms of synergies between the proposed subdivision and the Dunmore Junction concept plan currently being undertaken by the county with the assistance of a consultant. In consideration of this, the developer intends to utilize a cistern for domestic purposes until such time that the Dunmore Junction concept plan is completed and accepted by council, and a water distribution line is extended to the east to service Dunmore Junction and the proposed UFA development. Further information will be provided as part of the subdivision approval consideration today. In the Land Use Bylaw 2022-09, there are no uses under Agricultural IDP District 1 that accommodate a bulk fuel depot, so the proposal would fall under other uses as a Class 2 discretionary use, requiring consideration from the Municipal Planning Commission. The general purpose and intent of the Agricultural District 1 is to protect and enhance the agricultural production of products, goods, and support services on large parcels, while preventing the premature fragmentation of agricultural parcels and limiting urban and non-compatible agricultural uses that may impact the ultimate future urban expansion within the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan area. Under the Highway Commercial District, a bulk fuel depot is considered a Class 1 discretionary use. Under Section 14, Parking and Loading, under bulk fuel, oil, or fertilizer storage, it states 1 stall per 500 square feet plus 1 stall per employee. In the Cypress County Design Guidelines, Section 9.2, traffic analysis states that the developer shall carry out a traffic impact assessment when required by the development officer. Analysis will be required in cases where post-development traffic volume and traffic type may adversely affect adjacent roadways and intersections. As the development authority, the county reserves the right to require a TIA to qualify an application for land use reclassification, subdivision, development permit approval, where impacts to the adjacent road network by the addition of new or changes to existing developments needs to be studied. The Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan, Section 2.7, Dunmore Urban Services Area is intended to provide a secure future land base for the orderly expansion of the hamlet of Dunmore. The hamlet is considered as an alternative regional option for the development of a fully serviced community in the long term. In the Dunmore Master Area Structure Plan, Section 5.8, Development Concept Policy states that applications for development within the Commercial Industrial District shall consider potential land use conflicts and long-term implications of the proposal on existing and future adjacent uses. Development within the Commercial Industrial District shall be a mix of compatible and complementary commercial and light industrial uses. In the Gasoline Alley Area Structure Plan, Section 4.2.1, Commercial Industrial District is intended to provide commercial uses and general services to the traveling public that require easy access to the highway and quality, plentiful parking. Adjacent to the residential areas are industrial businesses that carry out their operations such that no nuisance is created or apparent outside an enclosed building. Cypress County will consider uses compatible with residential parcels when processing development permit applications. Appropriate screening will also be required to buffer between residential uses and commercial industrial uses. We circulated the application, and no comments were received from City of Medicine Hat at the time of writing this report. The Town of Red Cliff replied that they have reviewed the proposed development permit application as forwarded and offers no comments. Alberta Transportation replied that a permit will be required for the proposed development. Alberta Transportation is in receipt of a draft traffic impact assessment, and it is under review, and a roadside development application has also been received for the proposed development. Cypress County Public Works replied that the proposed entrance from Township Road 120 is recommended to be widened to 30 meters to ensure a proper turning radius for large trucks entering and exiting the site. Alberta Transportation will need to provide comments and recommendations for the intersection as well as the approach located from Township Road 120. Public Works has determined that the submitted drawings do not meet the requirements of the design guidelines and construction standards for culvert size and side slopes. The design construction drawings are to be provided to the county for review prior to commencement. Public Works would like to see a traffic impact assessment that reflects the future subdivision so that the intersection type is able to accommodate future traffic, as well as a finalized stormwater management plan to be submitted for approval that further details site drainage and outflows to Alberta Transportation's ditch. Cypress County Public Works may have further comments once Alberta Transportation has provided their review and comments. Cypress County Utilities replied that currently there are no fire flows in Dunmore, so these requirements will need to be taken into consideration. Alberta Environment and Parks should be consulted for sewer requirements should the multi-parcel subdivision be considering septic systems. Cypress County Fire Services replied that they have no concerns with the proposed development. The developer is required to follow the NFPA 30 Flammable and Combustible Liquids Code to be compliant with building codes. The Director of Municipal Services replied that the property for the proposed development application was approved for a land use district reclassification to Highway Commercial District earlier this year, and it will come into effect pending a subdivision approval and its registration with Alberta Land Titles. Vehicle-oriented uses are considered to be a permitted use, while bulk fuel depot is listed as a Class 1 discretionary use in the land use bylaw. Until the subdivision is approved and is registered with Alberta Land Titles, the property remains classified as Agricultural District 1. Therefore, for the time being, the proposed retail fuel card lock and bulk fuel storage development is considered to be under the category of other uses, which is a Class 2 discretionary use that requires approval from the Municipal Planning Commission. As a condition of the development application's approval, consideration that the developer shall provide a more detailed professional engineer stormwater management plan to accommodate runoff for a 1 in 100 year storm event for proper handling and containment to adequately protect the adjacent and downstream properties. In the submitted site grading plan, it is unclear where storm overflow from the proposed dry pond ends up or how it is addressed. In addition, consideration to place a specific condition as part of the development application's approval that the developer shall provide and meet the fire suppression measures that are required under the Alberta Safety Codes Act. So I did take a couple of pictures. So this is from Township Road 120 on an existing approach at the approximate area of development looking north. And you see Highway 1 in the background. And just from a little further in, so you can see the intersection. And yeah, not a whole bunch of different things to see, but gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So we'll move on to my recommendation, and that is to approve development permit application 22/157, subject to the following conditions, and with the understanding the business will be constructed and operated as outlined in the submitted application. Any changes to the business must be submitted for approval by the development officer or municipal planning commission. So 1 through 9 are standard conditions, so I'm going to jump to number 10, and that is that the developer is required to submit an engineer's design stormwater management plan to accommodate a 1 in 100 year event for the entire development area. The stormwater management plan is to be submitted and approved by Cypress County. Number 11, hours of operation for retail and bulk fuel shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. The unmanned card lock will be accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. Number 12, subject to a maximum of 5 employees. Number 13, the applicant is responsible to obtain any necessary approvals from Alberta Transportation prior to commencement. A copy of the approval must be submitted to Cypress County. Number 14, it is the developer's responsibility to enter into a road use agreement where required by Cypress County Public Works. Number 15, the applicant is required to submit design construction drawings to Cypress County Public Works for approval prior to commencement. Number 16, a separate development permit application is required to be submitted for the placement of any signs. Number 17, the developer is required to enter into a municipal services agreement with Cypress County and to be in compliance with the terms of the agreement for the installation of a water service connection from the county's distribution line, for the payment of the Dunmore offsite levy, and for the construction of a paved approach from Township Road 120 to be constructed and built in accordance with the county's design guidelines and construction standards. The municipal services agreement is to be executed and registered with Alberta land titles prior to commencement. And number 18, subject to annual review. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Would the applicant like to speak to the application at this time? Pretty much covered. Okay, open the floor to discussion. Nothing. You ladies worked hard and spent all these, and we have no questions for you. Okay, I guess we did have, and I neglected to acknowledge the people that were online that had registered with us as well. If there's anybody online that are here on behalf of the UFA, if there's any input they would like to put in, I would entertain that now as well.
I'm Brendan Kruger, Manager of Real Estate Facilities for UFA. I have nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Lloyd moves approval of 22/157 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development application has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The development permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within 21 days from the date of the issue, the permit will become valid at that time. If you have any questions, further questions, you can contact the development officer to discuss them after today's meeting. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
pretty much wraps it up for today's agenda. Next meeting, July 12th, 10 a.m. I hereby adjourn the meeting.